You know that person who still lives in the same house they bought 20 years ago? The kitchen counters are the exact same ones they moved in with when the kids were small. The front door has that specific creak they've heard 10,000 times. They know exactly which floorboard to step over to avoid making a sound in the dead of night. They know the exact angle the afternoon sun hits the living room wall every October. Meanwhile, the neighborhood changed completely around them. Neighbors came and went. Massive new builds went up down the street. Everyone else seemed to be constantly moving up, upgrading, refinancing, scaling. But they stayed, not because they couldn't leave, but because something in them looked at the modern upgrade cycle and asked the one question most people are too afraid to ask. What exactly am I upgrading to? And nobody around them had a satisfying answer. So they stayed. And while they stayed, something happened that the people who left are only now beginning to understand. Because refusing to upgrade your house for 20 years says something much deeper about the person inside. Let's start with what modern culture decided about people who don't move. The housing upgrade narrative is everywhere. The starter home, then the family home, then the forever home. Each step bigger, each step more expensive, each step signaling your arrival at the next level of success. Real estate media calls it moving up the ladder. The implication is clear. If you're not climbing, you're standing still. And standing still means falling behind. Your neighbors refinance to add the open concept extension. The acquaintances down the street sold and bought something twice the size in a more prestigious postcode. And you stayed. Same rooms, same garden, same driveway. From the outside, to a consumer-driven society, it looks like inertia. It looks like a lack of ambition. But from the inside, a completely different strategy was at play. Here's the brutal financial reality nobody talks about during the upgrade conversation. Every single house move comes with friction costs that the selling price never fully captures. Agent fees, legal fees, stamp duty or transfer taxes, moving logistics, new furniture for larger rooms, renovation to fix the new place, and a massive reset mortgage. Economists studying housing transaction costs found that the average house move in developed countries costs between 8 and 10% of the property's total value in combined fees and hidden expenses. On a $400,000 home, that is $32,000 to $40,000 completely wiped out before you've spent a single night in the new bed. Every upgrade resets that clock. Every move burns that capital. The person who stayed in the same house for 20 years didn't pay that tax once. They didn't pay it twice. They didn't pay it at all. That money stayed in their pocket. It paid down the principal on the loan they already had. It went into investments that quietly compounded in the background for 2 decades, while their neighbors were celebrating a beautiful new quartz countertop with a fresh 30-year debt sentence. The person who stayed was quietly becoming entirely debt-free. But the financial case is only the beginning, because what you build by staying inside the same walls for 20 years goes far beyond a bank account. Dr. Mindy Fullilove, a psychiatrist who spent decades studying human environments, documented a profound phenomenon she called root shock. It's the traumatic stress response that occurs when a person's familiar environment is disrupted or severed. Her research proved something the housing market ignores. The human nervous system doesn't just occupy a house, it calibrates to it. The particular ambient sounds of your neighborhood at 3 a.m., the way the morning light hits the kitchen table while you drink coffee, the specific temperature of the hallway in the dead of winter, the shifting colors of the backyard trees through every changing season for 20 years. These are not trivial layout details. They are the environmental anchors around which a stable human nervous system organizes itself. People who refuse to upgrade aren't just saving money. They are protecting their psychological bandwidth. They are maintaining a deep environmental predictability that produces lower cortisol levels, better sleep patterns, and lower baseline anxiety. They possess a nervous system that knows exactly where it is in the world, in a society that increasingly refuses to offer that stability anywhere else. There's another layer to this. Dr. Robert Sampson, a sociologist at Harvard University, dedicated his career to studying community stability and neighborhood effects. His research uncovered that individuals who remain in the same locality long-term develop what he termed thick social ties. These are deep, high-trust relationships with neighbors built over decades, not months. The rare kind of relationships where a neighbor has a spare key to your front door, where they watched your toddlers become adults, where they pull into your driveway without being asked the moment something goes wrong. Those relationships cannot be manufactured in 2 years. They cannot be bought in 5. They require the compounding interest of ordinary, shared life over decades. The person who constantly upgraded to the bigger house in the trendier subdivision started over from zero every single time. New faces, new superficial greetings, a new community built from scratch. But the person who stayed built a fortress of social safety, a network of people who actually know them. If you've ever driven past a house you used to live in and felt that strange, heavy emotion you couldn't quite put into words, that sharp mix of recognition, nostalgia, and acute loss, then you already know what the person who stayed never had to experience. They never had to mourn their own past. They are still living inside it. Think about what 20 years in the exact same house does for a family. The legendary child psychologist Yuri Bronfenbrenner spent his life analyzing what specific environments produce the most emotionally resilient children. His data showed that environmental stability is one of the single most powerful predictors of positive child development. Not the square footage of the playroom, not the luxury of the zip code, the consistency of the space. Children who grow up in one unchanged house develop a profound sense of placement. They have a fixed geographic point in a chaotic world, a place that is home in the deepest, most permanent definition of the word, the house where everything happened, where their height milestones are still physically carved into the wooden pantry doorframe, where they knew every single creak in the floorboards, where they could navigate the layout in total pitch-black darkness, because their physical body had perfectly memorized the architecture. That house shapes a child's psychology at a baseline level that a shifting series of upscale houses never could. And then there is the ultimate milestone, the mortgage. The individual who bought a modest, sensible house 20 years ago and refused to play the upgrade game, who simply made their regular payments month after month, is either entirely mortgage-free right now or weeks away from it. Meanwhile, the person who upgraded twice in that exact same time frame is still 25 years away from paying off the massive, predatory loan they took on during their last move. Financial researcher Thomas Stanley spent decades compiling data on how ordinary people build true, generational wealth. His findings were stark, consistent, and largely ignored by consumer culture. The truly wealthy do not live in the maximum house they can afford. They live in modest homes they have owned for a very long time. They don't upgrade constantly. They don't perform wealth for their neighbors. They build it, quietly, logically, without any public performance, until the financial independence is undeniable. The person who never upgraded wasn't falling behind the neighborhood. They were building actual sovereignty, while everyone else was financing an appearance. So, what does 20 years in the same house actually say about you? It says you make macro decisions based on utility and peace, rather than external validation. It says you understand the massive psychological division between a home and a status signal. It says you value the human relationships and memories trapped inside the walls, far more than the modern finish on the walls themselves. It says you are entirely comfortable enough with who you are, that you do not need a larger piece of real estate to prove your worth to strangers. It says you mastered a rule of economics most people figure out far too late. The upgrade always costs more than the price tag, and the staying always returns more than the square footage. Society looked at your unchanged address for 2 decades and assumed you failed to move up. What they completely missed was a person who was simply too busy building a real life to waste time performing.